So welcome to Conversations with Melissa. This is presented by RenaFi. RenaFi provides practical, research-based advice courses and peer support, focusing on the underlying drivers of our ADHD behavior. We provide a holistic program that serves to help you thrive with ADHD, not in spite of it. Visit RenaFi, RenaF as in Frank, I.com to learn more about what we have to offer. And remember to check out our YouTube channel for ADHD resources and information. So welcome, Marc Almodovar, who is the founder of Men's ADHD Support Group. Thank you so much for being a guest here on Conversations with Melissa.
Well, I'm really pumped to be here. Thank you for having me. As I started to step into the ADHD space, I started to meet a lot of different leaders who do amazing work within the ADHD community. And I really just fell in love with a lot of what was happening. But at the time, I had learned that there wasn't a dedicated space for men with ADHD. So I was going for a walk one day and I thought to myself, let me try out a men's ADHD support group on Facebook. There's probably going to be only like 3 people that join. Let's see how it goes. And years later, we find ourselves as a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're currently the largest online space for men with ADHD, and our goal is to empower, educate, and inspire. When we're talking about masculinity and just men with ADHD altogether, boys and men are obviously highly diagnosed with ADHD. It's the opposite problem that women with ADHD have. Women are often underdiagnosed. Where we have obstacles here is that boys and men are often not doing something about their ADHD. And when they are doing something about it, they're typically at a breaking point of some sort. They're going through a divorce. They're in high amounts of financial debt. They just lost their job, things along those lines. It's so extreme where it's like they're at a space where they're like, okay, I need help, right? So unfortunately, in our society, we have this idea that we're working on breaking down and we're getting there, but we're not quite there yet. But this idea of being vulnerable as a man being a sign of weakness, right? And what that leads to is this bottling up of emotions. It just keeps getting bottled and one day it just explodes. We often live our whole lives feeling as if we need to present ourselves as people who have our lives all together and are completely strong and stoic 100% of the time. Doesn't serve us very well. I don't have the statistics memorized, so I'm not going to get all Dr. Russell Barkley on you, but statistics would tell you that men have some really high rates of divorce, high rates of suicide, and this way of thinking that we need to present ourselves as basically robots, it's not something that serves us, right? When I look at navigating ADHD, and I don't know if you agree with this, Melissa, but it's almost like 50% of the battle is learning to build self-confidence. Yes, let's work on those things, but here's us holding up a mirror showing you that you're not broken. You just haven't been given the tools that you needed to thrive. Yeah, listen, and by the way, I'm working on it too. Like I will not sit here and tell you that I have my ADHD all together. This is something that's hard for me. And if the people that I was going with have a problem with this about myself, then are those people that I really want to be around?
Great.
I don't really
question.
think so. You know, it's like when you're having that boundary in place, when you're seeking that accommodation, it's almost like you're putting on a radar of some sort in some way, shape, or form. Who are the organizations? Who are the people worth keeping around and worth giving my attention, and who's not? We have to be. So it kind of goes back to what I called 50% of the battle with navigating ADHD. It's building self-confidence, right? Part of the reason why we do need to seek out support and work with people like coaches and therapists and things like that is because we need support and accountability towards the language in which we're using socially, right? Is it a language that is putting on this or feeding this ideology, this false narrative that you're a bad person? Or is it feeding a narrative of you're actually just a human being who operates a little bit differently than the everyday individual and maybe needs some accommodating or understanding here from another person? I personally want the latter. So when it comes to the language that we use, sorry is something that I still find myself saying. I've gotten way better at this, but I still find myself over apologizing just a little bit. Don't tell anyone though. But yeah, you tell everyone I'm kidding. But I have found it to be beneficial to say things along the lines of, Melissa, thank you for understanding that I was 15 minutes late. Time management is something that's hard for me, because when you're communicating something like that, one, you're not beating yourself up. Two, you're taking down a potential misconception that the person might have of you. Because when we're talking about what we call neurotypicals, when they're looking at people being late, they think it's a form of disrespect. And
Yes.
when we're 16, 17 minutes late, we're not thinking, how can I disrespect the person? We're panicking, thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm 15, 60 minutes late, right? So it's a misunderstanding. So you're self-advocating in a way that's not beating yourself up. What I have found throughout my life is and this is the case for many people with ADHD, I have lived my life thinking that if I was an extremely nice person, happy, smiley all the time, agreeing all the time, that would make me a better person and that would benefit me somehow. And it was almost like this coping mechanism that I came up with, like this quote unquote sense of safety. And what I have found is that living my life that way was actually really hard, because I was living my life inauthentically. And I had to do the nonstop work of constant masking and avoiding things that genuinely mattered to me. What navigating that has looked like for me has unquestionably been therapy. Therapy has been really huge. And I'm a big fan of being intentional nowadays. As I'm showing up here, there is a tendency to make myself sound like this professional ADHD leader who does not forget what the interviewer's question was and everything like that, and not show all of you who I am, right? There's a tendency, this imposter syndrome that comes in place. What I find myself having to do, or what I find helps me rather, is I like to ask myself, am I being me right now? Or am I being who this person feels that they need me to be? I like to be me. And there's all kinds of tips and tools and strategies. Like I tend to speak very quickly. So now I'm working on speaking a little bit slower so I can be more intentional as I speak. I love to affirm myself for speaking events like this. I'll look at myself in the mirror and just remind myself about how much I would have benefited from hearing everything that I have to say when I was 16 years old and severely depressed and just diagnosed with ADHD. Like, I do important work and I'm a great person. And so are a lot of you here. You deserve to show up in the world as you. And you can get the support when it comes to navigating people pleasing.
It's the flaws in many moments that make us the most relatable and human, where we can have the biggest impact.
It makes us feel less alone.
Yeah.
That's it. I want to know that there's I want to know that there's people who are successful, who I admire, who forget about events or double book themselves accidentally or anything like that. Like let me feel like I'm less crazy. I like that. It benefits me. There's value in authenticity for yourself and for the people that you surround yourself with. When we look at healthy masculinity, at least how we define it, we do think of it as purpose-driven, strength, all these type of things, right? And that's pretty traditional. Where we are thinking differently is how you get there. What is strength actually? And we don't think strength is suppressing our emotions. We don't think strength is acting like your ADHD is not a big deal when it is. We think strength is seeking mental health support. and recognizing that if you need something like a medication, it's perfectly fine. And it's a great idea. It's the idea that navigating ADHD, turns out it's not learning how to be normal. Navigating ADHD is learning about how your brain works and putting yourself in spaces in which you can actually be yourself and your brain is working for you as opposed to working against you. It's never easy to navigate life not knowing how you operate, right? Like if the only tool that you've been given is just try harder, like it can only do so much. I think the biggest thing when it comes to, I guess, in the setting of relationships and whatnot, right? When we talk about things like self-advocacy and boundaries, that's almost like step two. Step one is learning about who you are. Like, what are the boundaries you need? How do you operate? Is that when we mess up, which is bound to happen, it's really, really critical that we look at ourselves with grace and that we ask ourselves, what can we learn from it to move forward from it?